everybody, and welcome back to Ask the Unfaithful. My name is Sam. I'm joined by my counterpart, James. How are you today, James?
Sam, I am a little warm down here in Florida. It's a little hotter than a fox in a forest fire, actually. About 96 degrees out. But other than that, I am doing great. How about you?
Yeah, we're a balmy 80 today with major storms in Texas. It's just another Texas day in May for us. I think I woke up May 7th and Texas decided to say, hey, you know that 70 and 80 degree weather that you like? Yeah, it's gone. So get
Right.
used to it. For those of you that are regular viewers, we're so glad that you continue to join us. We are so thankful for your comments, for your email, for reaching out. We'd love for you to subscribe and continue to follow us. We are overjoyed at the privilege that we have to continue to provide content that encourages and uplifts and exhorts. Today, we've got a wonderful question that I think in many ways unfaithful have asked themselves this time and time again in an attempt to try and somehow make sense of our past. Many of you betrayeds who watch our videos and listen, we just are overjoyed that you're here. We want to just tell you that we see you, we're proud of you, and everything that we do, we continue to have you in mind as well. I'm sure you've asked this question as well, probably more than the unfaithful, actually, knowing the mind of the unfaithful. And that question is, why are the unfaithful dishonest with themselves? James, you do intensives. You work with people just like I do all day, every day. Take a first pass at, man, why do we just love to be dishonest with ourselves? Do we have to be? Are we trying to be, or are we just unaware?
There are a number of reasons. The first indicator that you're not being honest with yourself is when you say, but I am honest with myself. That's kind of your first indicator. And the whys are, we defend a lot of things. So we defend where we feel vulnerable. So our wounds, the things where, if they're hit, we feel we get really hurt. It could be sad, angry, just hurt, wanting to run away. So we're defending that, and we tell ourselves stories in order to not have to face that, and because it's painful, and all human beings avoid pain. So we don't go around slamming our fingers in doors for the fun of it. We avoid pain. If we get hurt, if we have a headache, we take aspirin. We do whatever we can to avoid physical pain, and emotional pain is the same thing. So that's one of the things. Another is that we defend our self-concept. Our self-concept is basically how we see ourselves in the world, right? It has a lot to do with image management as well, because we want to everything that we present in the world, we want to be in concert with our self-concept, but our self-concept is not necessarily, and usually isn't, who we are. But we do tend to buy that image of ourselves that we show to others, and that
Is it
is really being dishonest with ourselves.
is it that we want people to see us a certain way? There for decades, there's this expression that says, well, you're just managing your image because you're a narcissist. But where does self-image and how we want to be perceived by people versus the truth of who we are, where does that come in?
Well, we're trying to avoid judgment, right? We're trying to avoid looking bad in other people's eyes. We want to be accepted. I mean, that's a human need, is to feel accepted, feel like we belong. And out of that comes connection, which is
Right.
a baseline human need, right? And so, we'll do it at almost any cost. And the more we step outside of our integrity, the more we need to manage that image of ourselves to others, and the more we get away from being honest with ourselves and to others, because we can't face being judged, or people not wanting to be around us because of who we are, although it's not who we are, it's how we behave. And that's one of our biggest fears.
Do you think it's we don't want to be perceived as anything less than confident, perfect, affable, strong, that we have all of our stuff together?
Yeah, it's what everybody wants in another human being. Oh, I really like that person. They're just they're so likable. They're so cool. They've got great things to say. They. I wish I had their life, right? Which you probably don't. But yeah, it's all about how we're going to be received in the world, and often, sort of us imitating art, what we see uh, as in marketing and movies, et cetera, as this image of, or this character we need to be.
And I want to be real upfront because being a formerly unfaithful, this isn't something that we're really conscious of, right? This isn't something like we're waking up, checking our phone, going, all right, so I'm going to be dishonest with myself about this and this later, and then I'm going to call them. We're not consciously taking this approach, right?
No, no. I mean, it's been growing. We've been developing it over decades, right? Um,
Right.
because we have to shape who we are in order to be okay with our parents, in order, as we're growing up, in order to be okay with our community, essentially. So all the kids we're growing up with, and then all the adults we're with. So it becomes second nature. Because we practiced it so much, and we get really cautious about what we're going to show. So it's very rarely going to be in our frame of awareness, right? There are times when we might say, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to present this way." So in say an interview or something like that, where we are more conscious about what we're doing. But for the most part, we are unconscious, and that's why we're doing this today, is because we have to get conscious about what it is, or we keep doing the same stuff over and over and over again in service of this concept of ourselves that we're putting out there.
Right. Because let's face it, affair partners keep us feeling amazing about ourselves and fuel our ego to be very primitive and help us escape from our inadequacies and our failures. And they help us escape from true intimacy, which is our vulnerabilities and our failures and mortgages and bills and child issues and real life mood swings, because we gravitate towards, when we're unhealthy, we gravitate towards, I want to feel better about myself. I don't want to be intimate with myself or with my partner, because that means I have to talk about the faults and where I'm coming up short, and I have to get authentic, right?
Yeah. So affairs are inauthentic to begin with, right? Because they're affairs, because they're outside of our integrity. They're also a fantasy. And fantasies are pretty simplistic. There's none of these things that come into it. It's fantasies are all positive, right? It's only the good things, and so that's what an affair is. There's no real life in it. So yeah, that's really one of the reasons that we do it. It also reinforces that concept that we're trying to put out there, that we're always fun loving, always viewed as really wonderful or great people. We
Have
base
it all together. Have it all together. Our moods are perfect. We present so that we're just amazing.
And it's so willing to be accepted by the affair partner, and even our egos stroked, our we get pumped up from that positive only place, because that's all they see, and that's all they want too, because they're in a fantasy as well.
Is there a point where we struggle with what we so want to be, where we have this craving where we think, I really want to be this. Let's call it cognitive dissonance, call it whatever you want to. Is there a point, you think, where we unfaithful struggle with that?
Yes, I think that is a natural human thing too. So people used to look at me and go, "Oh wow, man, you're so calm. You must have it all together." Well, and really inside, I was just in turmoil. right?
Yeah.
And so here we are at sort of 12 o'clock, right? And this is here's what we kind of know how we want to look. This is okay, we want to be this whole person, right? And we kind of have an idea from values, et cetera, what that means. So to be a whole person is to mean to be in our integrity, but we don't know how to do it, right? And so we have this journey, a clockwise, hopefully, journey that takes us around. By the time we get here, it's a long journey. Then we actually know how to do it because that journey is really this, right? From the head to the heart. So
Right.
that connects head to heart. And when we reach here, now we know it. We're acting in concert with who we are. So we're absolutely in our integrity. But we can certainly project the image as people say, wow, you must have your stuff all together, right? But I didn't. And then, I had to make the journey here. So I had no way to back this up because I didn't know how to do it. So,
Yeah.
there's the thing is that's what we want to be, but at varying stages in our developmental growth, right? As we learn this, so it could be here, 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 that's our limit at that moment as to how much of ourselves we can be. So, but
Right.
we still like to project that
Oh,
wholeness.
absolutely. Absolutely. So let's move into the practical of how are we dishonest with ourselves. We talked about the subconscious. We talked about this isn't something that we're purposely trying to do, but how do we, in fact, get dishonest with ourselves?
So I like to say, this kind of exemplifies it. Burying your head in the sand works for sure, but it makes it hard to breathe, man.
Right.
So ignoring,
Absolutely.
right? We ignore the truth when it pops up because it's inconvenient and looks like it might be painful. So we ignore it because, when you see something in the road, right? You steer past it. And so that's what we try to do. The problem is it's the truth, so we can't actually do that. Um, but we do ignore it as it pops up for us.
Because do you think we ignore it because we just don't want negative feelings? We just want to avoid pain. We want to avoid trauma. We want to avoid insecurity, feeling less than. There has to be a component because I know for me, I was constantly trying to avoid the feeling of less than or like a failure or that I should have been doing more, but I'm not. And so, where does that fit in?
It's rough to know what our reality is and have it at the forefront of our minds all the time because it could be really depressing if our
Yes.
standard is not growth, but I have to have perfection. I have to be this whole thing, right? Which is what we consider that the world demands. Truly, people who love us they're not worried about are we perfect. They want us to just tell our truth as it is, be vulnerable. Obviously, as unfaithful, we have to earn that back. Um, but for ourselves, we like to delude ourselves because it's far too painful to see what the reality is. I mean, I can look at my whole life, right, and go, okay, I've been good at maybe 10% of things in my life. 90% I've fallen well short, made
Mhm.
massive screw ups, um, you know, not reached a level that I might have told myself I had, right? Or certainly that inner calm didn't exist. And so but I don't want to face that reality. It's too painful.
Right. Right. We don't want to face it. So if it's not porn, if it's an affair partner, it's an alcohol, I mean, it's a drink, it's a drug, it's a name it. It is really so much about avoiding. I guess a question for you, this has become popular on TikTok and Instagram and all over, is that do you believe that we can self-gaslight? Do we actors or unfaithfuls, do we self-gaslight ourselves?
We do it in the classic definition of gaslighting, which isn't the modern definition seems to like be all encompassing in terms of
Right.
lying, manipulating, etc. You can lie and manipulate without gaslighting. It's a lot less in betrayal work, betrayal stuff, but it's because gaslighting is really trying to change a person's reality, right? So yes, we can absolutely self-gaslight, and we do it to the extent that we basically tell ourselves all is okay or very little is wrong with me, because the alternative, so it's like this positive gaslighting, right?
Right.
Not necessarily positive, um, but it's sort of in that direction that we gaslight ourselves that we're great, we're doing just fine. When the reality is, if we looked at things, sort of removed ourselves from it and looked at our lives and what we're doing, we are definitely not going to be very pleased with that, because we're acting outside of our integrity. We're acting outside of our integrity when we're just practicing that projection of who we are out there, of that self-image that isn't entirely true.
What about defensiveness? So, how are we dishonest with ourselves by being defensive? Because I think every betrayed out there would say, oh, yes, please speak to the defensiveness that makes me feel like they are unsafe, not grounded, unreachable. Blah. The list would go on and on. But we talked about how defensiveness is a bit of a variable on how we are not honest with ourselves.
Yeah, so it's really what are we defending, right? We're defending this need to be seen in a positive light, this need to be likable, this need to be in essence right. Um,
Right.
and so, defend that image, that self concept that or that concept that we're putting out there. Um, and really, as we'll get into, it's an indicator to us that we are not in concert with who we are, and thus not seeing our reality. So when we defend, we are really saying, no, this image that I'm showing myself is, I'm going to defend that at all costs, because I can't stand the pain of what else I might see.
I think it's so beautifully said because I cannot tolerate the truth, which is I have come up short. I have lied. I have failed. I have blown it. I've yelled. I've not been perfect. I'm not perfect. We just don't like that. And I've told unfaithfuls for almost 2 decades, as long as we're trying to defend what we believe is 10% of untruth within the 100% of the argument, we look like asses because 90% is true, but we're trying to hold on to that 10% to manage some semblance of integrity or character or some type of personhood. And all it does is, would you agree that it just makes us look like we are living in our own universe and that we are completely missing the pain and the hurt and the needs of the betrayed?
Yes. Also, we're completely missing our own wounds, our own needs for our self-work, right? Because as long as we defend that and really believe that that's who we are, then we're not ever going to look at the reality. And the reality is what actually drives our behaviors and pushes us to a place where we lack integrity, and therefore hurts the people around us.
I think you're exactly right. If we, the unfaithful, because we hate reality sometimes, we don't want to embrace the reality of the situation, that we have devastated them, that life is a complete mess that is unmanageable by us. We're scared expletiveless. We don't know what to do. We lack the skills. So, how can the unfaithful step back into a form of reality? And maybe a little sidebar just for the betrayeds that are listening. What are some things that they can look for that help them feel confident that the unfaithful is on their way back into reality?
We need to be able to sort of have a few things that we can look at that help us track whether we are in reality or out of it, right? Because perception is reality. So, the marketing people use that, right? But it really applies to what's going on inside. So, we need to check our perception. One of the ways that we can do that is to look at, where am I blaming other people? What am I blaming them for specifically? Because then we can look at that and go, okay, I'm throwing that out on them because it's actually true for me somewhere, usually internally. So I can look at that, I can make a list of things I'm blaming other people for that are negative or bad in my life, right? And get some reality around that by saying, okay, how can I take responsibility for those things?
Right.
What am I not doing or what am I doing that I'm having to throw it out on others so that I don't have to feel the pain of it?
Because all we do is make ourselves look more and more unsafe the more we blame.
Yes. Oh, without a doubt. To a partner, wow, that is just A, it's re-traumatizing. B, it's just throwing something on our partners that will not land properly or well, and it's not true, right? So
Yeah.
we have to look at ourselves, because if I'm blaming somebody else, really, why am I defending? That's a defense. Why am I defending myself, defending that so hard that I have to throw it out on others?
What about the keeping of secrets? Because I have to believe the more that we keep a part of us hidden, the more that we're presenting and the more that we're not living in the reality of who we are and what we're capable of, right?
Right. So in AA, they say, keep secrets keep you sick. Right.
Yeah.
So when we can look at, what am I keeping secret? What am I lying about? Really means, what am I scared to be vulnerable about?
Mm.
Because if I'm vulnerable about that, then maybe it won't be acceptable to others. Maybe they won't be happy with me. Maybe they will judge me. Maybe they'll look at me differently, right? And so, what am I, it's not so much why do I keep secrets, because that's why, but what are those secrets? What am I lying about? Because that's going to tell you quite pointedly, where the wounds are, and where the reality is. Again, it's going to be painful to look at. This is not an easy thing, because it hurts.
No, not at all. It's monstrously difficult, but it's worth it. And what we unfaithfuls fail to realize is, when we're making our choices and when we are in human wrecking ball form, we never think about the consequences. We never think about what's going to happen. And then we're just constantly trying to manage it, and we're trying to manage the reaction of the betrayed. And I think it's so hurtful for the betrayed to see their partner or their spouse, male or female, live in this false reality that only continues to re-traumatize the betrayed and pushes the unfaithful further and further and further away from the betrayed's heart and the betrayed's willingness to try and retrust again. So it's a dark, as soon as we talked about this question, I felt a lump in my throat, because it is so dark to have to really talk about, because if we don't talk about it, there isn't going to be any healing. So what are some solutions? What are some things that, if I'm an unfaithful listening right now, and it's almost 20 years ago, and I'm listening, I'm saying, okay, I'm willing to try this, James, Sam. I'm willing to roll the dice. You haven't, I don't know if I'm all in, but I'm at least willing to try. So what are some things that they can start to do to implement immediately, right where they're at, listening or watching, to help them?
So first things first, you have to prioritize really a radical honesty with yourself, right? Um, this is not a radical honesty with the betrayed, from the extent of, hey, I'm going to say everything that comes to mind without processing it, and just, it's going to come to mind and it's going to go out of my mouth. You have to put your
Thank you.
brain into gear before you put your mouth into motion when it comes to the betrayed, because you have to be able to discern with hurt, which, you know, is telling truth. Sometimes truths are hurtful, versus
Right.
harm, which is brutality. So that's just a caveat here. But this is radical honesty with ourselves, right?
Yes,
Because so much
absolutely.
flows from there. So remember this, energy flows where priority goes, right? So if we're putting priority on our radical honesty with ourselves, all our energy is going to go towards that. If we've spent all of our energy outward, maintaining lies or trying to, okay, here's how I sold myself to Sharon when I met her, right? And as this guy read at the 12, right, where I didn't know anything, but this is what I thought I am, and I'm going to promote that. And so we give the best of ourselves in in the courting part of our relationship.
Right.
And then if I'm going with that, I'm going to try to support that throughout the marriage and say, this is who I am, this is who I am, not show any flaws. It's all that, and it's all at that point, because I don't know how to do it, it's all lies. And so then I'm spending this inordinate, unbelievable amount of energies going to supporting that image
Mm.
versus getting, and nothing goes toward being radically honest with myself. What if I reverse that flow, right, of energy into being radically honest with myself? I'm not sustaining lies anymore. I'm not sustaining lies to myself, using that energy for that. Now I've got this tremendous energy that can go into my honesty with myself. And that's where energy flows, where priority goes.
I
So,
love it. I love that. I think it's beautifully said. What are some other things that they can do?
okay. So, what's that smell, man? Sniff it out. Find out what is wrong. Something's wrong. You're going to know it. Your gut's going to tell you, what am I avoiding? What am I putting off? Those things are going to tell you when something's wrong. Follow your gut and say, okay, you know, this is what I have to look at. So it's about focus, really. Here's the thing about,
Wouldn't you also wouldn't you agree? I don't have this in my notes, but it's a safe statement, and I think this is a good moment to take a breath and say, the unfaithful has to be open to outside third party help. They have to be willing to trust someone like you or I and say, what am I not seeing? What am I not smelling? What am I not seeing the way I should see it? Right?
yes, if we're not curious, so this is the curious why that I like to talk about. The curious why has a lot of awesome things about it. We can do a whole podcast on the curious why. But really, if you're not curious about why you do things, then you're never going to get the answer, right? You
Right.
get curious about all kinds of things. Oh, how does this work? How does that work? Um, Very often, unfaithfuls we'll see an actress in some TV show or something, and they'll look her up, right? They're curious about her, but well, that's the wrong energy, man. You got to switch that energy to, why do I even want to look at her? Why
Well,
is
and
that?
I think I heard this from a great friend of ours who's a clinician as well, Amanda Esproni. She says this to people without blinking an eye. She says, "So you mean to tell me, unfaithful, you spent 1 year, 2 years, 5 years in an affair? You spent all that time and all that energy, and you can't spend at least that much time and effort and energy into trying to save the relationship? Do you see the imbalance here? You were willing to do all of that to get away with your affair, but now you say you want your partner or you say you want your spouse, but a little bit of difficulty and a little bit of resistance and a little bit of mood swing, and all of a sudden, we just can't do this. This isn't sustainable. We're not going to be. We have this tantruming toddler attitude. Quite honestly, I want to say, how dare us? The audacity to live in our dream world until someone like James, someone like Sam, someone like Rick Reynolds, Mike, we can go on down the list, Sharon, someone like that says, you know, have you considered the possibility that maybe you don't smell something, you've gone nose blind or you've gone morally blind?
Yeah, we really, when we start losing our ability to see those things, is when we've really bought into our own promote self promotion, right? We're
Yes.
starting to believe our own PR.
Yes.
You know,
Self-promotion.
let me tell
I
you,
always write things. I'm always writing things down while we have these podcasts, and there's no way I'm not writing down self-promotion because I love that. So talk about, I mean, what about good old-fashioned just owning it, taking responsibility, embracing it? But we don't want to do that because that means we're honest with ourselves, right?
right. So part of the solution, you know, I agree. It would be great if we could just say, hey, just own it, man. And that is part,
Nice.
absolutely. And we have to know what we're owning,
Yeah.
right? We have to be able to see that. So, you know, if you find yourself picking on this little thing, picking on that little thing, and you know, the famous football coach once said, and I can't find it anywhere on the internet anymore, so somehow it's gotten plucked, but I remember him saying it. And everybody's worried about mouse droppings when we've got a huge pile of elephant poop in the middle of the room.
It's
Here's a,
fair.
we can get stuck looking at all those little things because, and basically they're distractions.
Yeah.
They're not the focus of what needs to happen. We
They're
need to,
not the heart of the matter.
yeah, we
Yeah.
need to grab our snow shovel and start getting rid of that elephant poop, right? Because the mouse droppings are easy to clean up.
Right.
So, you know, this is about losing focus. We have to really commit to that focus on looking inside. We may not be very good at it to begin with, but it's like anything else. It took practice to learn how to lie really well. It's going to take practice to learn how to be radically honest,
Let me
right?
read you a statement. You wrote something down. You're gonna have to explain it because I think
Okay.
it's fantastic. But you said your mind doesn't tell you the truth, so you have to learn to rely on your heart. What does that mean? Because break that down for us. Isn't my heart corrupt? Haven't I let my heart go to a dark place?
No, you've let your mind go there. Your heart at its core is still the truth. The trouble
Hmm.
is stop listening to it. We cut it
Hmm.
off, right? We're cutting it off so that it can't talk to us. We think that this knows better than this, and it
Hmm.
doesn't. To quote a very famous prophet type of singer, right? It, to feel it is to know it,
Hmm.
right? A real philosopher type of singer, songwriter. To feel it is to know it. And, you know, a lot of people go, oh, come on, your mind. No, your mind is a moron. You cannot believe everything you think. We've said it a million times here. It's so true. So it will not tell you the truth because your mind, your active chitter chatter mind wants you to believe the line that you've sold yourself and everybody else. It wants you to believe that. It's a convenient truth.
Yeah. So true. I think you hit the nail right on the head because the thing that I have learned over almost 20 years is that I am responsible for my own mental and emotional health. Now, I have some wonderful people in my life. I have been fortunate to have some people at the top of the game of trauma care, of infidelity recovery. I have been, because I come from faith, I have no problem saying I have been incredibly blessed beyond my wildest dreams to have people like you and your wife Sharon and so many others. But as an unfaithful, our mental and emotional health is on us until we stop blaming, until we stop. And just because I love when we get comments, and I love when we get comments that are not always nice.
I
There's
love it a
nothing in
lot.
us that there's nothing in us that would say, oh, it's all about your trauma. It's just because of your trauma. The unfaithful cheat just because of their trauma. You're never going to hear that. You've never heard that from us. But you will hear that they have to understand why they've done what they've done. And if they don't investigate their trauma, they're never going to know why they've done what they've done. But we're not hanging our hat of infidelity. Oh, it's just because of your trauma. But
No,
my mental and emotional health, as we're about to be done, don't you agree? Don't you teach your clients that our mental and emotional health is on us. If we're a mess, we have to take action. If we have deluded ourselves and lied to ourselves and now we're suffering the consequences of it, we can't put it on the betrayed to
Mm.
save us. We can't put it on if our therapist or our coach, oof, I feel the warmth of conviction flowing through me. Just kidding. If our coach or our therapist is working harder than we are, something's wrong.
Absolutely. That's a real sort of rule for us, right? The moment we start working harder than our clients, then we have to back off and get them to do their work if we can, or encourage them to. Um, there's this great saying. I'm going to give credit Guy Corneau, who's a wonderful author. What you don't have has you.
Mm,
So if you don't have an understanding of it, if you don't, you've got to go through several steps, realizing there's something wrong, analyzing, ask for help to see if you're accurate about the answers you're getting internally, accepting it, owning it, taking responsibility for it, continuing to be accountable for it with yourself, right? Surround yourself with truth tellers, become a truth teller, mostly to everybody else, but to yourself. Because your mind doesn't tell you the truth, you have to align with the heart. You have to bring them together, right? Are you just deciding to go with a solution to get it over with, right? Are you trying to avoid the anxiety of working and waiting for that right answer to come so that you know what is the right thing to do and the best thing to do? And you need to ask people who aren't just going to feed you a line. I have this wonderful quote which I have to be cautious about, but it's not your BS that bothers me. It's your BS tells me that you're hiding something,
mm,
right? And so why get honest with yourself? You want to be living from truth.
yeah.
Uh,
I think it's I think we've covered the football field of this
ah,
today in so many different ways because
absolutely.
there is a need for us. If you're an unfaithful, I just want to appeal to you. Find help. If I can be of service, if James can be of service, there's other people out there. Find help to get honest with yourself. If you're not honest with yourself, I would venture to say that most of the work that you're doing right now is falling flat, both with your partner and with your own heart. If you're not honest with yourself, I just got to tell you, stop doing what you're doing. It's not working. Because until you can get honest with yourself, or until you can invite someone like my counterpart, James, or myself into your life to get honest with you and not get offended at them or angry at them or fire them when they get honest with you, I would tell you you're not going to gain a lot of ground. As we say goodbye today, James, what's one little thing that they can do? Is it go tell somebody safe? Is it go to your website? Is it go find somebody that they can tell? Is it give access to a close personal friend that they trust of the same sex that call them on their BS? What's one little nugget that they can do before we say goodbye?
You have to have at least one person in your life who, and preferably more, who's going to challenge you at every step, even if they think you're right. Something to keep in mind at all times is if it's easy, it probably isn't right for your growth. Carl
Mm,
Jung said, that which we resist persists. If we don't do the work, it's going to keep coming back at us. So do the work, find somebody that is trustworthy who will, light your pants on fire when they need to.
very well said. We're so glad that you joined us. You can reach us at asktheunfaithful@gmail.com. Subscribe, leave a comment. We'll see you next time. Thank you, buddy. Good to see you as always.
You too, Sam.